Hey. Hi, sweetheart. Hi. Sorry I didn't tell you I was sitting out back. I didn't think you'd be home early. Oh, it's nice to see you. Yeah, I'm just reading. Yes, outside. Just sitting on the ground. What's wrong with that? Are you judging me? No, how am I doing? I'm okay. No. No. Should have known better to assume you'd let that fly. I'm doing all right. Just a bit hypervigilant today. A bit. I wouldn't say anxious, but something like that. I feel like I've been out of my window of tolerance for a while, and maybe it's catching up to me now. But anyways, I'm just sitting out here reading. It's pretty calming. It's a nice day outside. What am I reading? I'm reading this book called The Hidden Life of Trees. Yes, it's another plant book. I know you've seen my bookshelf. You should know by now that most of them are plant books. But this one, it's really interesting. It's about the aspects of forests and, trees that you wouldn't think of, like how they communicate with each other in forests, and why do trees do better when they grow alongside with other trees, and how do they signal that there are predators around. It's really fascinating. I like it a lot. No, I don't mind. You come sit next to me, please. No, I would love that. Here's a nice patch of grass next to me. You can sit on. No, come here. Come here. It's really nice to see you, darling. I feel calmer just being near you. I feel less insecure just being near you. It's nice. You can grab your own book and join me if you'd like. Or, what? What? Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I'll read to you. As long as you don't mind it being about plants. Yeah, I can read to you. You know that I'm not the best reader, right? I trip up over everything all the time. I would say 40% of the time I'm gonna get the words wrong. No, I know you know. Yeah, I know you wouldn't have asked if you minded, but just something that comes up when insecurity strikes, you know? I don't think I have the most calming voice, and I'm not the best reader, but if you want to hear, then I will happily read to you. Well, get comfortable. You can sit over there if you'd like to. My lap is always open for my gorgeous boyfriend. You can lay on the ground in front of me if you'd like. The grass is quite soft. Yeah? Okay. I was secretly hoping that you would choose that one. I always love having you in my lap, but I had to give you a few options. Okay, there you go. Just... yeah. There you go. I love having your head in my lap. Okay. So, I just finished chapter 19, which was about how certain species protect themselves from their predators. Certain species of trees, like how the oak tree has a certain kind of aphid that always goes to it, you know? But I just finished that one. So now I'm on a chapter called Community Housing Projects. I don't know what it's going to be about, but we'll find out together, right? Okay. Alright. Here we go. I don't know why I feel like I have to amp myself up to read. I'm just nervous. I'm going to get all the words wrong, but okay. Alright. I'll shut up. Well, I'll shut up and start reading, so. Even if mature trees have now grown too thick for many of the activities I've described too far, animals are happy to go on using them. These giants can become coveted living spaces, a service the trees do not offer voluntarily. Birds, martins, and bats are particularly partial to the thick trunks of older trees. They like thick trunks because the sturdy walls provide especially good insulation against heat and cold. In Europe, it's usually a great spotted woodpecker or a black woodpecker that gets things started. The birds hack out a hole in the trunk that may be only an inch or two deep. Contrary to popular opinion, the birds don't restrict themselves to rotten trees, and they often start construction in a healthy tree. Would you move into a ramble shack home if you could build a new one next door? Just like us, woodpeckers want the place where they bring up their families to be solid and durable. Even though the birds are well equipped to hammer away at a healthy wood, it would be too much for them to complete the job all at once, and that's why they take a months-long break after the first phase, hoping fungi will pitch in. As far as the fungi are concerned, this is the invitation they've been waiting for, because usually they can't get past the bark. In this case, they quickly move into the opening and begin to break down the wood. What the tree sees as a coordinated attack, the woodpecker sees as a division of labor. After a while, the wood fibers are so mushy that it's much easier for the woodpecker to enlarge the hole. Finally, the day comes when construction is complete and the cavity is ready to move into, but that's not enough for the crow-sized black woodpecker, and so he works on a number of cavities at the same time. He uses one for the kids, one for sleeping, and the others for a change of scene. Every year the cavities are renovated and wood chips at the bases of the trees are evidence of this activity. Renovation is necessary because the fungi that have invaded the space are now unstoppable. They keep eating deeper into the trunk, transforming the wood into damp mush, which isn't an ideal environment in which to raise a family. Every time the woodpecker cleans out the soggy mess, the nesting cavity gets a little larger. Sooner or later, the cavity becomes too large and, above all, too deep for the baby birds, which must climb up out of the opening to make their first flight. And now it's time for the subletters to move in. The subletters are species that can't work with wood themselves. There's the nuthatch, which is somewhat like a woodpecker but much smaller. We have those around here. Like woodpeckers, it hops around on dead wood, pecking away to get at beetle larvae. It loves to build its nests in abandoned great spotted woodpecker nesting cavities, but there's a problem. The entrance is way larger than it needs and could let in predators intent on eating its brood. To prevent this, the bird makes the entrance smaller using mud, which it artfully arranges around the perimeter. While we're on the subject of predators, trees also offer their subletters a special service on the side, thanks to the characteristics of their wood. Wood fibers conduct sound particularly well, which is why they are used to make musical instruments such as violins and guitars. You can do a simple experiment to test for yourself how well these acoustics work. Put your ear up against the narrow end of a long trunk lying on the forest floor and ask another person at the thicker end to carefully make a small knocking or scratching sound with a pebble. Okay, honey, we need to go find a trunk. I'm going to put my ear on one side and you're going to knock on the other side. Do you see any trunks around? Me neither. I guess we'll just have to knock down a tree. I'm just kidding. Okay, where was I? On a still day, you can hear the sound through the trunk incredibly clearly, even if you lift your heads. Birds use this property of wood as an alarm system for their nesting cavities. In their case, what they pick up is not benign knocking, but scrabbling sounds made by the claws of martins or squirrels. The sounds can be heard high up in the tree, which gives the birds a chance to escape. If there are young in the nest, they can try to distract the attackers, though such attempts are usually doomed to failure. But at least the parents escape with their lives and can compensate for their loss by raising a second brood. Acoustics are not so important for bats, for they have completely different concerns. Some species of these tiny mammals need lots of tree cavities at the same time to raise their young. In the case of Bechstein's bats, which live in Europe and Western Asia, small groups of females raise their offspring together. There's lesbian birds. I love them. Aren't they bats? Lesbian bats. They spend only a few days in the same quarters before it's time to move on. The reason for this is parasites. If the bats were to spend the whole season in the same cavity, there would be a parasite population explosion, and they would torment the winged nocturnal hunters mercilessly. Short moving cycles take care of this by simply leaving the parasites behind. Owls don't fit very well into woodpecker cavities, and so they must be patient for a few more years. Over time, the tree continues to rot, and sometimes the trunk splits open a bit more that the entrance gets bigger, and sometimes there is a series of woodpecker cavities up the trunk that speeds the owl's entrance. These are like woodpecker apartments stacked on top of the other. As the process of decay progresses, they slowly merge into each other, and when that happens, they are ripe for the arrival of the tawny owl and his friends. And what about the tree? Its efforts to defend itself are in vain, and it's too late to mount an attack against fungi anyway, because now the floodgates have been open to them for years. But the tree can lengthen its lifespan considerably if it at least manages to get a grip on its external wounds. If it manages to do this, it will continue to rot on the inside. However, externally, it will be as stable as a hollow steel pipe and can survive for another 100 years. You can spot these attempts at repair if you see bulges around the edges of a woodpecker hole. Despite its best efforts, the tree rarely makes headway on closing the entrance. Usually, the merciless builder simply pecks the new wood away. The rotting trunk now becomes home to a complex living community. Wood ants move in and chew the moldy wood to make their papery nests. They soak the nest walls with honeydew, the sugary excretions of aphids. That's what honeydew is? That's okay, good to know. Fungi bloom on this substrate, and their fibrous web stabilizes the nest. A multitude of beetles are drawn to the mushy, rotten interior of the cavity. Their larvae can take years to develop, and therefore they need stable, long-term accommodations. This is why they choose trees which take decades to die and therefore remaining intact for a long time. The presence of beetle larvae ensures that the cavity remains attractive to fungi and other insects, which keep a constant supply of excrement and sawdust raining down into the rot. The excrement of bats, owls, and dormice also drops down into the dark depths, and so the rotten wood is constantly supplied with nutrients, which feed species such as the blood-necked click beetle. I hate click beetles. Have you ever had click beetles in your house? No? They live on your ceiling, and they can click off, like they can bend their bodies, and it makes like a sound. They're awful. Anyways, which feeds species such as the blood-necked is such a bad name. Okay, I'm going back to reading. Blood-necked click beetle, or the larvae of the European hermit beetle, a big black beetle that can grow up to 1.5 inches long. Hermit beetles are very reluctant to move and prefer to spend their whole lives in a dark hole at the base of a rotting tree trunk. And because these beetles rarely fly or walk, whole generations of the same family can live for decades in the same tree. And this explains why it is so important to keep old trees. If they're cleared away, these little black guys can't just wander over to the next tree. They simply don't have the energy to do that. Even if one day the tree gives up and breaks off in a storm, it has still served the community well. Even though scientists haven't fully researched the relationships yet, we do know that higher species diversity stabilizes the forest ecosystem. The more species there are around, the less chance there is that a single one will take over to the detriment of the others, because there is always a candidate on hand to counteract the menace. And even the dead tree trunk can offer a valuable service, managing water for living trees merely because it is there, as we've already seen in Chapter 17, Woody Climate Control. And that is the end of Chapter 20. Should I go on to 21? It looks pretty short. Okay. Are you enjoying yourself? You look so relaxed. You look so peaceful. It makes me feel more peaceful. Okay. 21, yes or no? Yes? Okay. Well, I need a kiss as payment for reading chapter 20 so well, I think. Yeah? Okay. Okay. You hear the kids. I love the neighborhood kids yelling. You like that as a kid? No? You're telling me you never rollerbladed down the street yelling? No? You missed out. Sorry. Sorry. I was just zoning out. I was just looking at you. The sun is so nice on your hair. Alright. Chapter 21. Motherships of Biodiversity. Most animals that depend on trees don't harm them. They just use the trunks or the crowns as custom-built homes that offer small ecological niches thanks to varying amounts of moisture and light. Innumerable specialists find places to live here. Little research has been done, particularly in the upper levels of the forest, because scientists need to use expensive cranes or scaffolds to check them out. To keep costs down, brutal methods are sometimes employed. And so, in 2009, tree researcher Dr. Martin Gosner sprayed the oldest, 600 years old, and mightiest, 107 feet tall and 6 feet wide at chest height tree in the Bavarian Forest National Park. The chemical he used, pyrethrum, is an insecticide, which brought any number of spiders and insects tumbling down to the forest floor dead. The lethal results show how species-rich life is way up high. The scientists counted 2,041 animals belonging to 257 different species. Tree crowns even contain specialized wetland habitats. When a trunk splits to form a fork, rainwater collects at the point where the trunk divides. This minuscule pool is home to tiny little flies that provide food for rare species of beetles. It's more difficult for animals to live in trunk cavities where water collects. The cavities are dark, and the murky, moldy brew that lurks there contains very little oxygen. Larvae that develop in water cannot breathe in places like that unless, of course, they are endowed with snorkels, like the offspring of the bumblebee hoverfly. Thanks to breathing tubes that extend like telescopes, these larvae can survive here. Bacteria are almost the only thing stirring in these waters, so they're probably the larvae's food source. Not every tree is targeted by woodpeckers as a nesting site and doomed to gradual rot, and by no means do all slowly waste away, offering many specialized species hard-to-find habitats as they do so. Many trees die quickly. A storm might snap a mighty trunk, or bark beetles might destroy a tree's bark in a few short weeks, causing its leaves to wither and die. Then the ecosystem around the tree changes suddenly. Animals and fungi that are dependent on the tree, pumping a steady supply of moisture through its veins or sugar to its crown, must now leave the corpse or starve. A small world has come to an end, or has it just begun? This next sentence is in German, and I'm sorry. I can't read that. Or has it just begun? Insert a German sentence, and it translates to, and when I go, only a part of me is gone. This phrase from a hit by German pop singer Peter Maffay could have been written by a tree, for the dead trunk is as indispensable for the cycle of life in the forest as the live tree. For centuries, the tree sucked nutrients from the ground and stored them in its wood and bark, and now it is a precious resource for its children. But they don't have direct access to the delicacies contained in their dead parents. That is depressing. To access them, the youngsters need the help of other organisms. As soon as the snap trunk hits the ground, the tree and its root systems become the site of a culinary relay race for thousands of species of fungi and insects. Each is specialized for a particular stage of the decomposition process and for a particular part of the tree. And this is why these species can never pose a danger to a living tree. It would be much too fresh for them. Soft, woody fibers and moist, moldy cells. These are the things that they find delicious. They take their sweet time over both their meals and their life cycles, as demonstrated by the stag beetle. The adult beetle lives for only a few weeks, just long enough to mate. This animal spends most of its life as a larva, which slowly eats its way through the crumbling roots of dead deciduous trees. It can take up to 8 years for it to get big and fat enough to pupate. Bracket fungus is similarly slow. It gets its name because it sticks out from the dead trunk like a shelf made from half a broken plate. The red-belt conch is one example. It feeds on the white threads of the cellulose in the wood, leaving brown crumbs as evidence of its meal. Its fruiting body, the aforementioned broken plate, is attached to the trunk at a neat horizontal angle. This is the only way it can ensure that its reproductive spores will trickle out of the small tubes on its underside. If the rotten tree it is attached to falls over one day, the fungus seals the tubes and continues to grow at right angles for its former fruiting body so that it can form a new horizontal plate. Some fungi fight bitterly over feeding territory. You can see this clearly on dead wood that has been sawn into pieces. You'll find marbled structures of lighter and darker tissue clearly separated by black lines. The different shades indicate different species of fungus working their way through the wood. They fall off their territory from other species with dark, impenetrable polymers, which look to us as though they are drawing battle lines. In total, a fifth of all animal and plant species, that's about 6,000 of the species we know about, depend on dead wood. As I've explained, dead wood is useful because of its role as a nutrient recycler, but it can also be a threat to the forest. But can it also be a threat to the forest? After all, perhaps, if there's not enough dead wood lying around, organisms might decide to eat live trees instead. I hear this concern voiced time and time again by people who come to visit the forest, and there are a few private forest owners who remove all dead trunks for exactly this reason. But this is neither a necessary nor a useful practice. All removing dead wood does is destroy valuable habitats because live wood is of no use to organisms that live in dead wood. Live wood is not soft enough for them. It is too moist and it contains too much sugar. This is quite apart from the fact that beeches, oaks, and spruce defend themselves from colonization. Healthy trees growing in their natural range withstand almost all attacks if they are well nourished, and the armada of decomposers helps feed the living trees as long as the little guys can find a way to make their livelihoods. Sometimes dead wood is directly beneficial for trees. For example, when a downed trunk serves as a cradle for its own young. Young spruce sprout particularly well in the dead bodies of their parents. This is known as nurse log reproduction in English and somewhat gruesomely as that word, or cadaver rejuvenation in German. The soft, rotten wood stores particularly well, and some of the nutrients it contains have already been released by fungi and insects. There is just one teeny problem. The trunk isn't a permanent replacement for soil, as it is constantly being degraded until one day it disintegrates completely into humus, spelled only with one M, so maybe it's humus, on the forest floor. So what happens to the young trees then? Their roots are exposed and lose their support, but because the process plays out over decades, the roots follow the disintegrating wood into the forest floor. The trunks of spruce that grow up this way end up being elevated on stilts. The height of the stilts corresponds to the diameter of the nurse log on which they once lay. And that is the end of chapter 21. Let me look. How are you feeling about 22? This one looks like quite a long chapter. It goes from page 137 to 147, a 10-page chapter. Sweetheart? Hello? Oh my god, he fell asleep. That's the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Well, now what do I do? Now that I've got a sleeping boy on my lap. Oh my god, he's cute. Can you kiss on the forehead? Sweetheart? Hey. Hello. My love. Hey. Welcome back. Hey, do you want to go inside? I can bring you inside and You can take a real nap on the couch, or on the bed, or wherever you choose. Yeah? Is that okay? No, it's all right. I feel a lot better after reading to you. I think I'll be good coming back inside. Thank you for letting me do that. All right, my love. I'm sorry to say this, but you'll have to stand up. I can't help you up if you're laying on my legs. Okay, come on. Let's go inside.